Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I don't know if you saw that, but just want to remind everyone that this HB 5024 licensed residential and supportive housing technical assistance webinar is being recorded. And I'd like to start off by saying, wow, this has been a very challenging journey for the OHA SDOH team and the recipients of this RFGA. This is the first time in several decades that OHA has had this amount of funding for real property development for supportive housing and licensed community-based homes and facilities. I want to give a shout out and thank our SDOH and Deloitte team for all their hard work and commitment to these projects. I also want to thank all of you for the tremendous amount of patience. As our interim manager would say, as we fly the plane as we build it. We continue to work on expanding our SDOH team resources to create and implement procedures to ensure that we move these projects along efficiently and effectively. The SDOH team did receive 63 applications and 35 applicants received intent to award letters. So I want to congratulate all of you. We look forward to working with you. And now I am going to move on to the agenda. So the purpose of today's presentation is to provide you all with an opportunity to get familiar with the grant agreement. We will go over the agenda. I'm not going to read all of the information we're going to be going over for the grant agreement. I do want to remind you all that all lines will be muted and we'll be answering questions throughout the meeting. Please leave your questions in the chat and our team will attempt to answer as many as we are able to during this presentation. Any that we are not able to answer, we will be forwarding to the SDOH team. Next slide. So the grant agreement overview that we're going to be providing today is for both supportive housing and licensed residential treatment. So as all of you know, the grant funding was made available by legislature through House Bill 5024 in 2021 to the Oregon Health Authority for capital and startup costs related to increasing statewide capacity of licensing residential facilities and supportive housing to, of course, serve people with behavioral health conditions. The grant agreement is the legal document and agreement between OHA and the recipients. It outlines the details of the program description, the use of funding, payment reporting requirements, special terms and conditions and requirements intended for the use of the funding and the property, which is where the declaration of restrictive covenant comes in. So dates that are tied into the grant agreement and are due after the grant agreement is signed are listed in this slide. So the certificate of insurance is due within 30 days of the grant agreement being signed. The project performance plan is due within 45 days. Other reporting requirements include monthly reports, quarterly reports, and annual reports. Next slide, please. So we're going to provide a high-level overview of what the program descriptions are for both licensed residential and supportive housing. And I thought about this because we've had a lot of questions regarding program description, if there could be some exceptions made to modify program planning. And so I just thought I would do a quick refresher on and highlight some of the major points. And so for the supportive housing, that applies to serving individuals with serious and persistent mental illness who can live independently in community-based housing with appropriate supportive services. And please refer to your grant agreement, because we want to make sure that you understand that this also must meet the requirements of the supporting housing as it is definition in Exhibit A, Part 3 of the grant agreement. The project budget may be revised by the recipient upon the request and approval in writing by OHA. Recipients may reallocate approved awarded fundings across budget lines in the amount of 20% of the award without prior written approval by OHA. Any reallocation of fundings more than 20% of the approved project budget will require a resubmission of the project budget by the recipient and approval by OHA. The total award not to exceed amount payable to the recipient provided in Section 3 of the grant agreement indicates that additional funding may be made available upon request by the recipient and both approval of OHA and written amendment of this agreement. Please remember that we are unable to make any promises or guarantees that any additional funding will be available, but we also want to make sure that you are aware that you do have the right to request additional funding. And so that one was for supportive housing. So I'm going to move on and just capture a little bit of the licensed residential program description and criteria. So for this one, you must be a licensed SRTF facility, RTF facility, or RTH and serve individuals 18 or older with mental or emotional disorders that require a higher level of care and treatment in residential settings. Again, read the program description for priority populations, aid and assist, civil commit, and PSRB. There is criteria listed in there for priority population and order of placement priority thereafter in the grant agreement. It's also important that you remember that direct residential services to the residents must be provided. Additionally, services must be culturally responsive and linguistically appropriate by skilled staff. The services should also be trauma-informed services that are non-judgmental, non-stigmatizing, and non-cohesive. And I think that pretty much covers it for this slide for program description. And again, if you have any questions, please make sure to put them in the chat. And any questions we're not able to answer today, we will get back to you later. So next slide. Payments and reporting requirements. So we no longer use paper checks. You must be enrolled in electronic funds transfer or direct deposit. You must register with SAM.gov, obtain a unique ID number, and have a completed FAFTA form submitted to us. So grant funds cannot be expended for any supplemental or other funding sources. So anything that you put in your budget is what is approved, and anything that is not within the scope of the budget is not something that we've agreed to support or pay for. The other friendly reminder we'd like to provide is that no grant fund disbursement will be sent out until the grant agreement is signed. And as you can see here in this slide, the payment requirements and deadlines are listed there for your information and reference. Reporting requirements and deadlines is this next slide. Okay. So reporting deadlines and requirements. So here we want to make sure that that everyone stays in compliance with the grant agreement, and we understand that there's a lot of information here. The SDOH team and our Deloitte partners will help your organization complete the steps, and we'll be sending out further guidance for reports soon. We will be providing technical assistance for these reports. So the first one is the performance plan. That's going to be due within 45 days of the grant agreement being signed. And this performance plan will you'll provide a detailed description of the project, including the context, planned work, and intended results. The monthly reports will ensure that you're in compliance with any project timelines and grant activities for the project. Quarterly reports will provide information requested in respect report templates for expenditure reports, project status reports, and other data as requested. The annual report is intended to provide insight on how the project is promoting equitable outcomes and how the project is engaging with the community. And I would say that if applicable, probably should not be there, because we want you to understand what the needs of your community are, what it is to be inclusive, and ensure that we are providing behavioral health equities to all of our members of our communities. Next slide, please. I'm not going to read the terms and conditions here, but I want to make sure that that this is highlighted, because providers are expected to adhere to all of the terms and conditions outlined in the grant agreement, including state standards and federal terms and conditions. And so make sure that you read the Declaration of Restrictive Covenants, the RFGA policy and policies and terms, the housing project completion obligations, and then the ownership of the project information as well. Next slide, please. This is a continued terms and conditions. Again, these are sections that are highlighted, and we want to make sure that you understand and that you follow the terms for state standards and federal standards as well. So operation and maintenance of the project, disclaimer of warranties, limited liabilities, which Angel will go into more depth with our future slides, your professional responsibilities, prevailing wage requirements, and subcontracts. And so I think I'm going to hand this over. Well, maybe I have one more slide. Next slide. No, I think this is Angel's slide. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to pick up here with the insurance requirements, and I think you're all probably familiar with these, but so I'm not going to read through all of them, but just want to note that the following requirements must be maintained during the course of for the duration of the agreement. Certificates and proof of insurance to be submitted to us before conducting any activities. So we have to have those in hand and within 30 days of the grant agreement signature. We also need to have 30 days notice prior to insurance changes. And then we do reserve the right to review and approve all of the insurance policies. And lastly, the insurance requirements are subject to change and may be updated periodically. And we'll keep you up to date on expectations if those change. Next slide, please. So this one is just the approved budget. The partner grant agreements contain an SDOH approved budget, and partners will receive regular funding disbursements based on monthly invoices submitted to the SDOH team. So there's a few parts to this. And let's see here. We'd like to know if you think that you need to reallocate any disbursements, and we need those requests to be submitted using the templates provided on the website. And approved expenses will receive grant fund disbursement within 30 days via direct deposit. Let's see. Sorry, hold one second. And then the payment cycle will begin with an initial fund disbursement to cover project startup costs, such as purchase of a property or a building, followed by monthly funding disbursements tied to the organization's monthly invoices. Similar to a draw process that most of you are familiar with, likely. I think that's good. Next slide, please. And so prevailing wage rules, they do apply here. So the prevailing wage is a set of laws that apply to all, all contractors and subcontractors performing work on a covered project. There are the types of work here that are subject to BOLI prevailing wage laws. So construction, rehab or reconstruction, major renovation. There are a few exemptions listed here on the slide. And then, yeah, we are required to collect weekly certified payroll reports as a public funder. So, well, it says weekly certified payroll reports, but we just collect them once a month by the 5th of the month. And let's see what else stands out here. If you don't know and are not familiar with the BOLI laws here, it would be in your best interest to reach out to BOLI. They're super helpful, and your contractor, your GC on the project is, should be familiar with all of this. But if there are questions about responsibilities, then reach out to BOLI, and I think we have some contact information later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. So the next steps here, once the grant agreement is executed with your signature, you may begin to submit funding disbursement applications immediately. If you haven't already purchased your land or property, the declaration of restrictive covenant and closing on the land or property will be the first orders of business. And then those of you who have already purchased the land or property still need to submit a declaration of restrictive covenant. And there's a performance plan that's due within 45 days of signing the grant agreement, and the certificate of insurance due within 30 days of signing. So pretty basic stuff with the insurance. Okay, next slide, please. This one is about records retention required by the state. There's a statewide public policy. Entities that receive public funding for the delivery of the supportive housing program must adhere to certain requirements for records retention. It's overseen by the Secretary of State and provides access to all documentation related to the performance of their services. So we're required to retain records for the longer of 6 years. Following the final payment and termination of this agreement, this period may be as may be required by applicable law, including the records retention schedule set forth in the OAR. We recommend that you develop a system now if you don't have one already to retain project records as required. And then the rest of it, we're sending the slides out to you so you can have these for reference. So I think that's probably enough on that one. We can go to the next one, please. I guess that's about it. We want to hear from all of you. We welcome your questions. We have a couple of different ways to reach out to our team. The number one way that we're encouraging folks to reach out is the shared inbox here in the blue rectangle at the bottom of the screen. That's going to get the fastest response. We get a ton of email, and so we want to make sure that we're responding in a timely fashion. So that's your best bet. And then there's a couple of phone numbers if for some reason you need to reach out to one of us. Blanca and myself are both on there. So yeah, I don't know, Chelsea, are there other questions? Are there questions in the chat that we want to talk about now, or what do we think? Oh, thank you, LaDonna, for putting that. She just put our team email in the chat as well, so you can grab that. We do plan to, if there are unanswered questions, we're going to address those in follow-up communications in future TA sessions, which we will be having. I know we've talked about having one around the reporting requirements. What else? We're going to post a recording of this on the SDOH website for you. Let's see. I'm going to pull up the chat and see what kind of
Hey,
questions.
Joe, I can read the chat for you.
Thank you.
Sure. So the first question was, as part of our requisition policy, we require contractors to attest to compliance. Sorry, let me pull this up so I can't see the rest of it. Here we go. Compliance on prevailing wage. Should we send copies of this to the OHA once signed?
Yeah, I don't know if if it's in the rules that we need to have sort of the prevailing wage, the decision. I'm not sure that that is required for us, but I'm not sure if anyone knows the answer to that. We can look it up. I'm happy to look into that, and we can post that as part of our responses following up on the webinar questions.
Angel, that sounds perfect. Michael, I'm going to take this question down and we will follow up with you on the answer to that. Our next question comes in and says, when can we expect grant agreements to be sent?
Yeah, so I think that our goal is to have those being sent out starting May 1st. So that would give everyone a couple of months review time to get through all of your processes and boards and council and whoever needs to look at it. So that is our goal, is to Monday, May 1st, be sending those out to people, or early that week. And I agree, Michael. I think that just the best practice would be to send along that wage determination and all of, but I'm reluctant to ask partners to do more than they're already doing, but yeah, we'll talk with our team and get back with everyone. I think it would be smart to have it on hand as well. Does anyone else have questions or concerns? You know how to get a hold of us if anything comes up.
There's one more question. It says, trying to better understand the flow of things. Once we sign the grant agreement, can earnest funds be released to secure property, or is a declaration of restricted covenants required simply to get a property under contract?
Blanca, can you speak to the process here, or is this something that we should follow up and report back to the partners on?
So I think I can answer this question. I'm looking for it in the chat just to make sure that I understood it correctly. So once we sign the grant agreement, once the grant agreement is signed, then our next step will be to go through our Office of Financial Services to work on the disbursement of funding. The disbursement of funding cannot occur prior to closing and having the declaration of restrictive funding, the declaration of restrictive covenant signed, is how I understand the process is going to work. This is our first time doing this, and so we are, just bear with us because this might not be 100% accurate. But what I do know is that since many of you have already returned your conditional award letter, that could be a cost incurred invoice that we would then reimburse.
I see the other question, Michael, about the direct deposit form. Does anyone on the Deloitte or OHA side know if there is a new direct deposit form that needs to be filed, or if old ones will suffice? I kind of feel like there needs to be a new one just so we can make sure we have everything up to date and like the latest information. I kind of feel like that would also be a best practice, is just to request a new one from folks so we can have a complete and updated file. But
and that information did go out when we sent everybody their intent to award letter. We sent that form attached with the intent to award notification.
oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, so Michael, if nothing has changed, we do not need an updated one, but if anything has changed or it's been a while and you're unsure of what was previously submitted, please just send it another one.
Okay. Well, we don't want to take anyone's time. We know it's valuable and we don't want to hold you here if no one has any questions right now. But again, please reach out to us at the team email there on the screen. Oh, let's see. More questions are coming in. So Rita, I have a question back, clarifying question for you here. So she says, is a prevailing wage requirement related to development of multifamily apartments utilizing other state funding as well? So if you are you asking if you're already reporting to other state agencies based on that funding? The weekly payroll reports, we need them also, or I suppose you're muted, so you can't. You can't.
Yeah, I'm gonna unmute Rita real quick. Just give me one
Thank
second.
you.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So if these funds are also leveraging other funds from the state, typically multifamily housing development does not require prevailing wage, i.e. Davis-Bacon wage rates, the federal level.
Mhm.
So I know that if you have a residential treatment facility, that's a different situation.
Mhm.
And then Boley does say, yes, you have to pay prevailing wage rates. But if we are building 20 units and 10 of those or 9 of those are going to be for this population, that's a question I would have.
So your project is supportive housing?
Supportive housing, yes.
Yeah, so while I am not a prevailing wage expert, I do know there is like a waiver process or exemption process, and I think that's what you're speaking to. So
Well,
in
we
that
could look into
case,
that also.
yeah, I think there is, and if you can get a waiver, from Boley, then obviously.
Okay,
Mhm.
yes, thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
And I just put that information in the chat.
Okay.
So I know we have a few questions on the timing of everything, and I see Bryce with your grant agreement. I'm going to take this one offline and work with you separately to see if you have an expedited timeline and what those constraints are, and we'll follow up with you. Alrighty, I see some things slowing down in the chat. Michael, I'm also tracking that one. If you guys do have any other questions or you would like to talk to us more, please feel free to reach out to our inbox again. We will also be sending out this recording and the slide deck for you to review again. Thank you all for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.